Hello and happy Friday, everyone. Today we are going over this week's Modern Family Dynasty Newsletter. This is our weekly recap. My name is Denver Noes. Thanks for taking the time to watch. Today, and this, of course, you can access this newsletter on LinkedIn and in the LinkedIn groups that we have. Little known strategy you can use to save millions in taxes. So lately, we've been doing a lot of conversation on tax topics. That's because, of course, we're coming into these final deadlines for extensions, everything being filed. And then we're going to come into the fourth quarter of the year where a lot of strategies need to be done on year end. So if you're looking at big tax liabilities for the year, don't wait. But today we're going to talk about one of the little known strategies you can use to save millions in taxes. It's one of the most profound. It can have an incredible impact. It's not that difficult to implement, yet most people aren't even aware of it and they're not using it. And even when I show this to CPAs, they start nodding their head, and it's something that they're starting to talk more about to get people more aware. So let's kind of jump into it. And if you have questions or comments, feel free to type them into the live. I will go back and reply to any of the comments as they happen. And let me get my chat open here using Restream. So as we kind of get into tax brackets, this little known strategy is about tax brackets. Now, tax brackets are one of the most boring topics ever, but it's important to understand how they work and how you can use it to literally save millions of dollars. So when you have tax brackets under current tax law, all the money you earn is taxed at a different rate based on these sleeves right here, the certain amounts. So as you exceed certain amounts, then it's a tax at a different rate. So you end up paying a little bit of all of these rates, depending on where your income is at. So as you get into these higher levels, right, then you're getting taxed at 32, 35%. And so when people a lot of times say, hey, I'm in a 40% tax or 37% tax bracket and everything else, part of their money is, but part of their money isn't. So it's tiered. So that's just the first part to understand that all the money is going to be taxed at different rates. And so if you're a high income earner now, which is, probably incomes from 150 to 150,000 a year to $1 million plus, this starts to become a problem because the downside is there's really no such thing as a retirement tax bracket. When you get down to retirement, and I'll share this bucket worksheet, it's going to be in the group, money is going to be taxed in 3 different ways based on how it's allocated now. So you have, of course, taxable accounts, which you're probably familiar with. Money's taxed at you go, you get 1099 interest on it. Then you're going to have tax deferred money, which is things like 401ks and IRAs. That's what most people are familiar with. You get this tax deduction now, and then you pay the taxes later when you take the money out as ordinary income. This is important to know because there still is somewhat of a misperception out there that there's a lower retirement tax bracket. So there's not a lower retirement tax bracket, right? When you have your 401k, for example, you're going to get down to retirement, you're going to take that money out. It's going to be taxed as ordinary income just like it is today. So unless you go back, let me go back to the bracket again. What the strategy then entails is you're trying to get down to retirement where, right now you're deducting money from your 401k, say at 35%, you're getting that deduction. Then when you go to retire, you want to be withdrawing at a lower rate, 10 to 12%, even 22%. So you're filling up the lower brackets at the lower rate. But if you don't have any tax-free sources of income, like on these buckets here, then now you're going right back up into the same rate you were before. And now not only are you paying ordinary income taxes on everything you put in, you're paying ordinary income taxes on all the gains. So for the high income earner, this becomes a problem. For I would say probably 90% of Americans, it's not an issue. Everything we're talking about here is not relevant because the top 10% pays about 70% of all federal taxes. Most of the federal taxes clearly paid by the top 10%. So if you're in that group, that's where these strategies start to have a huge impact. So again, now moving forward, what happens at retirement, people are finding out as the 401k generation, as the baby boomers are entering retirement, 1 out of every $3 that they have is going to taxes. This idea that, hey, I'm going to get down, my expenses are going to be lower. If you're in this kind of higher income range, top 10%, you're trying to build retirement incomes of, 120,000 and up, taxes are going to be the biggest expense. And so people are finding this out. And in fact, there's even so much, if you look at the financial planning software that I would say 99% of advisors are using, you probably had it. They run Monte Carlos for you where they're simulating your returns and what's going to happen when you retire. They're not taking out taxes out of so many of those calculators. And then you're going, wait a second, I did this budget, but I didn't plan for a third of my money going away to taxes, right? And so that's a big surprise, and it's a big drain on wealth over time. So that's why when you start using tax brackets and tax buckets in this strategy, and I'll show you some examples. This is just a simple example of 120,000 in retirement income. And normally, say you have 30,000 coming out of Social Security, 90,000 is coming out of a 401k. So taxes, current law, roughly around 11,000 federal. Now, maybe you're going to have some more deductions or maybe less, but 11,000 just on the federal side, not including state and other taxes. So if you start adding in a taxable and tax-free income stream, meaning you get down to that retirement and you have 30,000 from your Social Security, but now you have 45,000 come up from a 401k and 45,000 tax-free, boom, now you've dropped into lower brackets. That saves, in this example, $7,000 a year under current tax law, 25 years in retirement, $175,000 in tax savings. Now, again, I always tell people, if you don't send the money to the IRS and you keep it invested, keep it growing, can you double that money once, over the course of your life? Yeah, you can double that 175 grand, goes to 350. Can you double it twice? Yep, or 350 grows to 700. So over 25 years, you could probably conservatively do that. And that adds an extra $700,000 in wealth. And when you start thinking about how hard you're working, for the money that you have, and you can just, by some different planning strategies, create an additional $700,000 in wealth, it's a big number. And then, of course, the bigger your income stream, the bigger the income it's going to make. So, and of course, I work with a lot of clients that, we're trying to build incomes of, 25,000 a month or, even 250 a year. And when you start looking at that number right now, if you get down to retirement and you have 30,000 going from Social Security, 220,000 coming from a 401k, you're going to pay about 40,000 in federal taxes if taxes don't go up. And we all, I think, have a good idea that they're probably going to go up a little bit, maybe not a huge amount, but they're certainly going to go up. And if you can go back now and use tax diversification, split that 401k withdrawal, instead of 220,000 a year coming out of this 401k tax deferred, you're going to have 110,000 coming from a 401k and 110,000 coming from a tax-free strategy. That drops your federal taxes from 40,000 to roughly 15,000, 35,000 a year in savings. You times that by 25 years. Now you're talking $875,000 in tax savings. Keep that money invested, double it once, double it twice over 25 years. That's $3.5 million in additional wealth. And so that's why people are able to go, how do people ask me often, how do you get into the top 1%? Or how do you stay in the top 1%? And a lot of it is protecting wealth from taxes. So that's $3.5 million of extra wealth that you have, again, just by planning it in a different strategy. And so that's what tax diversification can do. There's some resources I've shared in the Wealth for Life group. You can read about this in the newsletter as well. But this tax bucket worksheet is really something that's easy to access. And again, it's just a simple sheet that is to kind of get this on your radar. And you go in there, it's in the Wealth for Life group. You can download it, just take a quick inventory of assets and go, wow, do I have anything in a tax-free position? And there really is no limit to the amount of money you can get into a tax-free position. It's really the only limit is mainstream financial advice, because it doesn't really show you all the ways you can do it. A lot of these strategies are certainly more proprietary, and they're geared toward people that are really in that top 1% or trying to get right to that top 1% level. And so some of these aren't shared as much because you don't want them to get abused and exploited. It gets blasted all over Twitter, and then everyone's doing it the wrong way and ruining it for a lot of people. So some of these strategies are more closely held, and that's why I certainly post those in the Wealth for Life group, and those links are on the newsletter as well. So check out that worksheet, and then that's a good strategy to use. And then people often ask, and there were some questions, from the group, from some of the chat on the newsletter earlier, where, what type of assets do you use? And is there more efficient ways to using Roth and things like that? And the answer is yes. So like Roth IRAs aren't particularly going to get you there. You just can't get enough into Roths. Now, of course, there's backdoor Roths and mega backdoor Roths, but there's actually more efficient ways to do that, whether it's using financial leverage to create tax-free income, or making rental income tax-free. I mean, there's all these ways you can do that. And in those last two events, with those two combined, over 1,200 attendees at those, kind of going through the strategies. And I've placed recordings of those in the Wealth for Life group on LinkedIn. So if you're watching this or listening to this, you go to wealthforlifegroup.com, and that will take you right to the LinkedIn group, and you can join. So that's wealthforlifegroup.com. That's on LinkedIn. So there's some good resources there. All right, so now in the newsletter, of course, we do the 4 sections, and we get into the first one is kind of the learning section. Then I go into the chart section. And with this one, so, it's talked about the consumer squeeze and really the pain and pressure that consumers are going to be feeling. This is some great information I get from Hedgeye. They have some good information. But we talk about SNAP benefits ending. For those of you who don't know, SNAP is what is now called food, or what used to be food stamps. And there was, about 24 billion, I think, through COVID that had been authorized for that program. So you had these higher benefits, pretty significantly higher, and those benefits are going away. So it's kind of or went away in March actually, but are actually kind of feeling that decline now. So 24 billion in reduction. And so what that translates to kind of the average family there, as you can see from the screen, like $391 going down to $120 per child. So if there's a family of 4, you can see you're seeing hundreds of dollars of reduction in benefit at the same time while we have higher inflation on food pricing, which is making it very difficult. Then you're adding in some of these other things like, the student loan repayment, another government shutdown, who knows? And then the child care, another 24 billion funding. So families are getting squeezed because they have this extra funding. You have higher prices. You have all these issues going on. And then when you look at the impact of that on the chart that I shared this week, which is on the fact that how much consumers are getting squeezed, you look at credit card balances have now kind of spiked up to getting to these historical highs of, really in the fastest pace in 20 years, as you can see from the chart. So credit card balances are going way up. These benefits are getting cut, and credit card interest rate is rising to this almost historical level. So over 20%, I've seen it as high as 25%. So you have consumers, really a lot of Americans, probably 50 or so million Americans, maybe even more than that probably, that are getting squeezed in these areas. And then they're using credit cards, and then the interest rates are over 20% on those cards. So I don't really see how, when you're talking about these single family incomes and household incomes in the 20 to 30,000 a year range, 40, 50,000 a year, even raising a family of 4, then they're getting credit card interests that are at 20, 25% because of shortfalls. It not only is it from the financial standpoint, what's that going to have impact going to be on the economy? When is the breaking point of that going to be? And that's where it really comes down to kind of having, better policies and stuff to design this and better ways to deal with that. So as higher income earners, we're in better positions to kind of deal with these things. And that's where a lot of times when I talk about tax protection and what we can do to put ourselves in better positions, tax protection is a great thing, because that way, if we're able to protect more of our wealth, retain more of our own capital, we can then be more intentional in how we're directing that and doing more good in the world. And that's like I have on this diagram that you may have seen if you've been following me for a while. But what happens with this high tax environment is it breeds animosity, mistrust, us versus them. That happens when you have a great year on your business, you make an extra, $400,000, and then 50% of that goes away to taxes. You write a check for $200,000 extra, you start to get, kind of a little upset about the rest of the world. Like, man, this wasn't easy for me. I worked hard to get it, and now I'm just sending it away. So that animosity takes people that would normally say, hey, I really would like to do more good. I am really a generous person. I want to make a difference in the world. I'm not into this kind of, slash and burn capitalism. But man, these people are taking 50% of my money here. So when you implement these tax protection strategies, retain your own capital, grow it in efficient ways, using the things that we talk about and in the ways that give value and all those good things, enjoying your life and making profits and everything. But it does give you this flexibility now. Hey, I'm going to get more actively involved. I'm going to use some of the strategies like we talked about, whether it's private foundations, where it's a great way to reduce taxes, become your own charity, do good in the world, or it's just simply getting involved in your community and donating directly to charities. So when you have more capital to do it, again, you just have a bigger pie to divide and help and do different things. So that's why I think tax protection, a lot of people look at it as like maybe it's kind of anti doing good, but it's really not. And it's just to say that, hey, I think I can redirect my capital or some of my capital in better ways than I think the government can. And I think there's actually taxes, of course, that we do need to pay. There's good things that the government does. I know a lot of hardworking people in government, but we need to be partners in that. And protecting our own wealth is a great way to do that. And that's why tax and protection and building our own modern family dynasties and making that impact in the world is a good thing to do. So if you want more strategies on that, of course, check out the group, or you can directly message me, of course, on LinkedIn. So then in each section of the newsletter, we cover those four sections, which is the learn section, the chart section. This was the concept that's kind of at the end. And then my favorite productivity tip for the week is using computer glasses. And I stare at screens all the time. And a lot of times at night too, working on screens. And then hopefully when I'm having fun playing video games with my kids. And so using those light blocking glasses, because the blue lights from the screen really make your eyes tired, and especially at night, messes up your sleep cycles and everything else. So Gunnar is one that I like. It's gunnar.com, Gunnar.com. And they have a lot of cool styles, a lot of cool glasses. These are, of course, the Tony Stark models, the Iron Man ones. So but they really actually do work for dry eyes and eye fatigue and everything else. So I highly recommend checking out some glasses. All right, so is the Modern Family Dynasty recap for the week. Check out the wealthforlifegroup.com to join the group, get access to the spreadsheet and the replays of all the trainings, and just direct message me if you have any questions. Thanks a lot for watching. My name's Denver Noes. We'll talk to you next week.